Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Sports Illustrated beat writer covering the Las Vegas Raiders and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast. You can find me on IG when you go to Hondo SR and on X, formerly known as Twitter, when you go to @Hondo Carpenter. Additionally, don't forget, go to si.com/NFL/Raiders for all of our coverage of the silver and black. Very excited to have a guest in today. Who is new. I hired him. He started the first of the month with us at SI and really appreciate him and his work and all that he does. If you're a Raider fan, you've already noticed his articles. He does a terrific job. He's a graduate of Central Michigan University and in their terrific journalism department, now working with me covering the Raiders. This young man, Michael France. Michael, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be making my debut in front of Raider Nation.
It's good to have you here. Now, before I get to Michael, we are going to take a challenge today from an NFL general manager. Had an NFL general manager who said to me, why don't you go farther? He listens to our podcast. Why don't you explain to people how valuable first round picks are by going over the last 10 years and identifying how many first round picks each team had, how many top 10 picks, and look at the correlation to those who are good drafters and success in the National Football League. Now, I've talked to you about it, but he said we should break it down this simple. And due to my schedule and how busy I am, I didn't have that time. But I said to Michael, I said, listen, this is a great opportunity. I said, we're going to do it eventually. And he took it, did it, got it done. And we are here today to break this down for you. Very interesting. I want to just hit on something before we get started. I had a recent meeting. It could have been the combine, but I think it was the NFL owners meeting. I was talking to an NFL executive, Michael, and he explained to me if a team misses out on one first rounder, it's like a boxer. It kind of wobbles them a little bit, but doesn't knock them out. 2 bad years sets the team back considerably. 3 misses in the first round just knocks them into oblivion. And he talked about a team cannot afford. And I asked him, what's your number? He goes 70%. You want to be at 70% in the first round. You don't want to take risks that you can avoid. Now, this executive has won Super Bowls, so he knows what he's talking about. And he said, one thing that we've done is there are times we've let people go by and our fans will get on message boards and say, oh, we lost this one. Okay. But they don't talk about the 15 that we didn't miss on. And they don't talk necessarily about the fact that we're, battling, we're above that 70%. So we're going to dig right into it. Now, the number one, there are 2 teams in the last 10 years. So we're going from the 2015 to 2023 draft. Now, some of these teams have traded them, but based on their performance on the field, this was their original draft order. The New York Jets and the New York G-Men have each had 8 top 10 picks in the last 10 years, all of them. And they've had 12 total first rounders. So this is the team with the teams with the most top 10 picks, 8, and 12 first round picks. And needless to say, both of them have been bad. Michael, your thoughts on this?
That makes sense. You said one, it's more than one. You start to set them back considerably. And right off the top of my head, when I'm thinking of the Jets and the G-Men, the Jets, I'm thinking of 2 guys right away: Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson. Pretty. And then with the G-Men, I'm thinking Daniel Jones. That pick really hurts. I believe it was Dave Gettleman's pick in 2018. That one is aged very poorly. I mean, obviously, you get down to Tommy DeVito. Now they're looking at possible quarterbacks into this draft. Yeah, right away you're looking at quarterback misses, and that's the position you can't miss on.
And DeVito wasn't even a first rounder. So, I mean, they're getting more production out of him. I mean, here's the amazing thing, and this goes back to quarterbacks. And one of the most successful one of the most successful people in the NFL at drafting quarterbacks said this to me. He goes, "You cannot take a first round quarterback and be wrong. You just can't do it." He goes, "It is too important to your franchise." He calls them career killers. You pick a first round quarterback that doesn't fail, you're gone. And when you look, okay, so they go pick Daniel Jones, who at the time, every person that I respect who is an NFL select, who's had proven success at selecting quarterbacks, said, "We're not touching Daniel Jones in the first round at all." I mean, this is mind-boggling. And you look at these two teams, there's three of them. Three of them. Bad news. All right, next we come to Jacksonville. They've had 7 top 10 picks, 12 overall first rounders, and look where they're at. They've had a lot of misses in the first round. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is a miss, but they've had a lot of misses. And because of the other bad draft picks, they get a little close, but they go take a step back. Again, Jacksonville there. Then here's another one. The gift that keeps on giving. Chicago. They've had 6 first round picks. 6 top 10 picks. 8 of them, and 8 first rounders, 6 first. And again, Chicago continues to walla. Atlanta, 5 top 10 picks, 10 first rounders. Again, you can go back and say, well, yeah, but they had a quarterback. Yep, they did. But it was more than 10 years ago that they got him. So the team doesn't draft well. Hey, let's just get rid of the quarterback. Foolishness. Now, San Francisco has had 9 first round picks. But if you look at the correlation here, since Lynch has come in, now they're improving. Now they're getting better. They're hitting on their picks. He didn't want Trey Lance. I reported this at the time. He had people that above him who wanted Trey Lance. He's luckily picked Purdy. So San Francisco. Then Detroit. Thank God for Dan Campbell. I'm a native Michigander, but 5 top 10s. And when you look at what he has done, obviously with his terrific general manager, that trend is changing. But you got the Detroit Lions at 5 top 10s, 10 first rounders. Arizona. I don't even know that if Arizona was arrested, Michael, for being a NFL franchise, if there'd be enough evidence to convict them. And then they've had 5
tough.
top 10s. What'd you say?
I said that's tough. Oh man.
Okay, but they've had 5 top 10s and 10 first rounders. Carolina, 5 top 10s, 9 first rounders. Cleveland, 5 top 10s, 9 first rounders. There you go. Continually, what are your observations here on this group of teams?
You're seeing a lot of quarterback misses. I mean, let's look at obviously San Francisco. You miss with Trey Lance. You look at Cleveland, misses there. You look at Arizona. That's a big one. Remember, Josh Rosen in 2018. Huge miss. And then obviously Chicago and in 2017 with probably one of the misses with Mitch Trubisky drafting him way higher than he should have been, obviously. And then of course, you miss out on 2 stud quarterbacks in that draft. Now, obviously, we can get into the nitty-gritty with Deshaun Watkins. We don't have to, Deshaun Watson, we don't have to touch that. But obviously, Patrick Mahomes, generational talent, quickly becoming one of the all-time greats. He has a dynasty.
Watson isn't. Watson, you could take away all the off-field stuff. What's Watson done? With all the money he's making, he can't stay available.
That is true. Yeah.
And the best ability is availability. He doesn't have that. And he's not a guy that I know guys who played with him in Houston. They're just like, yeah, good guy, but a guy.
A
And
guy,
now here's
not
something
him.
I find interesting. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Michael.
No, I was just saying you're right. Not a guy, a guy, but definitely not him. That's a but still Chicago, Mitch Trubisky. Yeah, that's the consistency I'm seeing here is big time quarterback misses is what all these teams have in common with these top 10 picks.
Now here's the deal, and not just top 10 first round picks. So let's look at this. Of these 10 teams, only two could you legitimately say are stable and either ascending or at consistent playoff. And that would be Detroit and San Francisco.
Correct.
So, and what do those two teams have in common, Michael? They've both changed leadership and now have stability. I was told this. You're going to get a kick out of this. At the NFL owners meeting, I was talking with someone very well known, and that's an off the record meeting, so I'm not going to say who. I don't think they would care, but it was off the record. They told me they love how we always hammer the best ability is availability. And they said, but do you know what's even better up in the executive suite? I said, what's that? And they said, the best ability is stability. I thought that was a good line. Matter of fact, when my wife and I got in the car, I said to Shannon, that was the line of the night. The best ability outside of the players is stability. Coaches, owners, executives, all of that. All right, let's keep going now, because it's not like now that's 10 teams that are consistently, and 8 of them are consistently high drafting teams. Brutal. Tennessee haven't won a lot, but they've had 4 top 10s, 11 first rounders. Tampa Bay won thanks to Tom Brady and free agents, 4 top 10s, 8 first round picks in the last 10 years. Raiders, 4 top 10 picks, 7 first rounders. Chargers, 4 top 10 picks, 10 first rounders. Washington, 3 top 10s, 10 first rounders. The Natty, 3 top 10s, 10 first rounders. Denver, 3 top 10s, 8 first rounders. Again, you're starting to see now as you get to the middle of the pack, some teams that maybe don't draft great, but they're just good enough to be mediocre. They're just good enough to be, they're the kind of, well, we finished only 2 games out. Well, we finished 1 game out. Now, Michael, I want to get into another thing that I was told. I want to get your opinion on this. I was told by someone I know who works for the league, the actual NFL. He said, you got to understand, the more teams that you have competitive for a playoff spot, the happier we are. And you're like, what? He goes, oh, yeah, that means more fan bases are engaged watching at the end of the year. So if your team finishes 1 game out, you're still watching that last game. And he goes, that's why we love, in the NFL, they always want teams to be competitive. They want there to be competitive balance. They want to do everything they can to keep as many teams engaged as they can for the TV, for the eyeballs. When you start getting past those first 10 teams, you're seeing teams, the Raiders, they're always kind of, they were super bad 2 years ago. Last year, though, Antonio Pierce gets them rose up again. They finish 1 game out. You're starting to see that now where we are. Your thoughts on this next group of people?
A lot of contenders. Obviously, contending is not making the playoffs. And we're talking about the group we just covered, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the Raiders, for example. Antonio Pierce steps in, and you start to see almost right away, maybe not quite. You start to see he's establishing his vision, his philosophy, and you can see the team getting behind it. And you saw that with the end of the year performances last year. So for our
Yep.
Raiders, things are looking good. And obviously, I think you can look to the Detroit Lions for an example of a pretty quick cultural turnaround.
Yep. And it's like Houston. They were always
Another one.
competitive. They were, decent drafters, although I don't think the Deshaun Watson pick was a good pick at all. But they were always decent and but not good. This is where you hear those teams, and we're going to really see it coming up in a minute, where the teams that are very effective with their first rounders are always competitive. We'll get to that in a minute. So then we come to the teams that have had two top 10 picks. Indianapolis, they're always there. They're always competitive. Miami. Dallas, you can hate the Cowboys. God hates the Cowboys, I think. Now, I know that's probably sacrilegious, but I'm trying to be funny, but it's pretty true. Okay, the Cowboys and Buffalo. Okay, so when you look at these teams, they're always competitive. And I don't care what anyone says. I don't think Dak is an elite quarterback, but I think he's salvageable. I don't think he's great, but I think he's salvageable. And I mean, you look at all of this, look at Buffalo, two top 10 picks, 9 first rounders. You're starting to see now these are teams that are there in consideration every year. Now the price of poker changes. Now is where we really want to talk. The last 10 teams. The NFL wants there to be competitive balance. They want it to be as close. The first 10 teams, you saw how bad they were. 2 were ascending because they've made changes. Then you saw 16 teams that are kind of they may be good, may not be good, in that competitive balance. But when you look at these we say the bottom 10, but they're the most successful 10, it tells the story, Michael. Philly, Seattle, New England, Rams, Baltimore, Houston, Minnesota, New Orleans, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and Green Bay. The first 5 have all had one top 10 pick. So Baltimore, Seattle, New England, the Rams, Baltimore, Houston have all had one top 10 pick. Miami, New Orleans, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Green Bay have had 0. But listen to this line. Philadelphia, 11 first rounders, made the most of it. New England, 9. Rams, 4. The Rams have almost acted like they were led by a guy that you wouldn't know. You're too young, Bobby Beathard, who's considered one of the best GMs of all time, who used to say, I want to trade my first rounders. If I'm not 100% sure a guy is a dude, I trade him and go get a guy I know what he's going to give me. Baltimore, 10 first rounders. Houston, 7. Minnesota, 10. New Orleans, 10. Kansas City, 8. Pittsburgh, 9. Green Bay, 11. And again, those first 5, one top 10. The next 5, 0. What do they all have in common? Contenders. Consistent contenders. What did you learn by this?
First of all, I really appreciated the Bobby Beathard quote because I believe you talked about it last week with Zeke. Bobby Beathard is obviously, one of the greats. I mean, what, 4? What did you say? 4 Super Bowl titles under his belt. What I see here in this, and it's actually 11. What I see here is,
Oh, I'm
all
sorry,
these
11. I apologize.
yeah, 11. 9 of these teams made it in the span of 2015 to now 2024. We're talking 2015 draft to 2024 draft. So you can technically count Seattle. Of course, they've been consistent, so we'll count them anyway. And then Houston has been on the upswing, so that tracks. But 9 of these teams have made it at least once, minimum once, to their conference championship game. And that is, of course, the Eagles, Patriots, Rams, Chiefs, Ravens, Saints, Vikings, Packers, Steelers. And that means, they're winning one minimum, maybe even two playoff games.
When you look down and break down these numbers, you now understand why I've harped a lot on you can't miss in the first round. And the teams that come in with a mindset, I can't miss. Okay, this guy's shiny. I remember when Pitts was coming out, okay? And the tight end from Atlanta. Everybody was, woo, this guy is so athletic. And he was. Woo, this guy can do a lot. All true. 100% true. And I remember the good drafting teams telling me, oh, you don't fall in love with physical skills after the season, that you just watch the tape. You pay attention to the tape, pay attention to the medical reports, pay attention to the off-field concerns and the interviews. I remember a guy telling me last year when the rumor was CJ Stroud failed an IQ test. This is a guy who has picked very well at quarterbacks. He said to me, first of all, I don't even pay any attention to those tests. I have never looked. Never looked. I want to know, how's a guy play football, not how would he do open heart surgery. He goes, I'm an all football guy. He goes, and I'm pretty successful. And he is. He goes, I'd probably fail the damn thing. That's what he told me. He goes, I don't care about that. I want to know about your football, and off the field, are you a person of integrity? I don't care. He goes, I'm not asking you to sit back there in the pocket and do trigonometry on where to throw the football. I mean, that really surprised me how many of the good teams don't care. But he said to me, he goes, those are the things I care about. And he goes, this Pitts kid, he goes, is going to get picked high. But what if you don't have a quarterback for him? What about other issues? He goes, they're falling in love. It's phenomenal to me. Phenomenal to me. Let me go back, give you another story. Matt Millen, who is one of my dear friends, was the general manager of the Lions. And he had a plan to go get two guys in the first round. He's going to select one and trade up and get the other. But his coaching staff wanted Calvin Johnson. So they go behind him to the owner, and boy, they really are pumping up this guy. We got to have this guy. We got to have this guy. We got to have this guy. So there's pressure on Matt, and he picks Calvin. And he said a great wide receiver may impact the game 15, 20 plays. But there's 140 plays. And the two guys that I wanted, one of them was going to be on the field every single defensive play. The other guy's going to be on every offensive play. And oh, by the way, both ended up being all pros and being very successful Hall of Fame guys. Okay. And they used Pitts and said, listen, this is a kid. Everyone's being blown away about what's happened after the draft. And that's what the bad team's doing. He's with a bad team. Thoughts?
First off, I have a theory. I know who the defensive player Matt Millen was talking about in that draft. I'm not gonna. I'm pretty sure. And I like what you said about game tape earlier. And a mutual friend of ours, you know who I'm talking about, always told me growing up, the eye in the sky never lies. Game
Great Chuck
film.
Grenier.
Great Chuck Grenier. And in terms of these picks you were talking about, you look at the Texans now and just the last draft alone and how quickly a draft class can turn everything around. You get CJ Stroud, and then you get Will Anderson. And both of them, amazing.
I mean, let me tell you how fast a good draft can change your team. First time I kissed my wife. Okay. I mean, it was star rockets, nuclear explosion. It was great for me. She gave me this look and said, I don't know about you,
Oh no.
but a good drafting team, you can change it. Remember, that's 2 first rounders. Bam. They go get Will Anderson, and then they go get CJ Stroud. A guy on each side of the ball can change it. I think people. I was talking last night to a GM, and I sent your work to him, the one who made the suggestion, and we were talking about it. And he said to me, and I'm going to read his text. After we got off the phone, he sent me this text about your work. He said, the young kid is totally onto it. This, to me, is what people miss. NFL fans approach the draft emotionally. I have to approach it differently. I have to approach it with a long-term vision. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. I have to approach it with sustainability. They approach it completely different. Again, he said sustainability, fans emotionally. I thought that was a brilliant line.
Yeah, not every day are you going to be. And first of all, Kansas City at that time, even they were a playoff team. They were good. You're not going to just get a Patrick Mahomes and get almost. I don't want to say that lucky because, like I said, Kansas City was already a really good playoff team, and get over that hump almost pretty much right away where you're in AFC and you're going to be competing for Super Bowls. It does take a long-term approach. Look at the Detroit Lions, for example, with the draft. And honestly, I would also say look at the Green Bay Packers too. And a lot of it is not even first-round picks with the Packers. It's kind of their drafts as a whole. But now look what that Packers team is, that young core, especially defensively, that's looking really good. And then offensively, Jaden Reed, wide receiver, Michigan State. Good picks. And they build up, they accumulate, and now you're competing.
One of the things that Green Bay's done for years, and I know several people in their organization, they don't take risks anytime. When it's rounds 1 through 5, I'm not saying they don't miss, but at the position when they pick guys on their board that they have valued there or higher. They understand the importance of, okay, I may let a guy go and my fans get ticked because I let him go. But when we picked, it was a risk. And this is why I love it. And you know what? There are some people that just work hard at their job, save their money, and build wealth. They invest and they build wealth over decades. Then there are some that don't buy lottery tickets. Okay. I always tell people, you're always going to have an example of somebody who hit with lottery tickets. But 99% of those people fail. But those that just do it the right way, they go to work, they work hard, they're diligent, they're frugal, they invest. All of those things end up having wealth. And successful teams in the NFL, yep, occasionally somebody reaches and hits. But those that do it all the time, which should be the goal of every NFL team, those that do it every time are the ones that are consistent, like these bottom 11 we just saw right here. And I think you nailed it. It's the first round. You just can't. And this is what those executives have told me. You cannot miss in the first round. Second round, you can't miss. I had one GM tell me, I always count on my first and second rounders being immediate starters within 1 year. Immediate. And he goes, I like to put my first rounders in there and start them, let them fail a little bit. But he said to me, look at Green Bay. They go get a quarterback, develop them. Kansas City, go get a quarterback, develop them. They understand not rushing guys. So these people understand I'm not going to rush my first and second rounders. Not putting them in there too quick. Now, this guy has played one first rounder a significant amount of time who was very successful. He said, but those guys are unicorns. They're unicorns. And to me, I just think when you break this down, it tells a story about the draft, doesn't it, Michael?
It does, and you mentioned Green Bay with, that method of, drafting a quarterback when you already have an established starter and then sitting them and letting them ferment and develop in that system. It's paid off twice now, back-to-back
Yep,
starters.
totally has. This is Michael Franch. You can read all of his work, of course, at si.com/NFL/Raiders for us. We're really excited to have him on the team. We'll get him back here on the podcast again soon and breaking stuff down with us, but make sure you do it. And again, terrific young man, great addition to our team. We've got a great team with all of our writers at SI. We continue to add more because you people, the growth in our coverage has been outstanding. And when it grows and you like and share and subscribe, and if you're watching on YouTube, hit that bell so you get every notification. When you guys do that, it allows us to bring in more people and to just make our coverage bigger and bigger and bigger. So, Michael, thanks for being part of the team. Great first job, and I really appreciate you joining us. Again, that's Michael France, one of our new writers, and we owe the great Chuck Grenier, who will always be referred to on anything I do as the great Chuck Grenier, a lot of respect for sending him our way and recommending him. And remember, great information here. Share this with people about the value of the draft in the first round.